Welcome to my walkthrough for this little square. This is part of my Tranquil Leaves set. This is the blossom only from the table runner or bed runner, whatever you want to call it. Maybe a scarf, wall hanging. I don't know what you're going to do with it. But this one's just the blossom, this tutorial right here. So, interlocking version, just the blossom, go. What you're going to need is 2 colors of yarn, one light, one dark. They have to have enough contrast so that you can see the stitches. If you're using worsted weight like me, you can use a 4.5mm hook or a 5mm hook. Read the label on your yarn. If it says use a 5mm, I typically use a 4.5. Some worsted weight is a bit thicker and it'll say use a 5.5mm, so then I use a 5. I like it to be a little bit smaller just because it makes these little windows just a bit tighter. It does affect the drape of your fabric, so if you like it really loose and wiggly, don't size down your hook. If you want to use a different yarn, bulky, fingering weight, just change your hook to match your yarn. Your image will still show up. Your finished piece will be smaller or larger, of course, but the picture will be the same. So, let's go. Okay, I've got my 4.5mm hook, my worsted weight yarn, main color, accent color. I'm using a dark and a light. You can switch them if you like. You'll still get a picture. I also have some stitch markers. They will help me keep track of my rows, or if I put it aside, I use a stitch marker to keep the loops from pulling apart. Right now, I don't need them. I'll just put them aside. We're going to start with our main color. For me, is the dark one. I'm going to make 17 windows in our foundation. Start with a slip knot, of course. We start with 5 chains, which I know, you say chainless and then you start with chains. It's weird. It's just the way it goes. This is the bottom, the side, and the top of the first square. We're going to double crochet into that first chain. And this makes our first window. It's a box. I mean, you can't really tell it's much of a box yet, but I promise this is a box. Chain 1, between each double crochet stitch, you have a chain. And now we're going to treble. We go over, yarn over twice, and we're going to put it right at the base of the previous double crochet. And our treble is going to bend. This is now the chain 1 at the bottom. So the next step is to yarn over and pull through 2, but you're going to pinch after you go through 1 because that's where the next one goes. So we chain 1, we're going to make a treble again, right into that pinched spot. So yarn over, pull through 2, that makes the chain at the bottom. Yarn over, pull through 2, but right in between those 2 is where your next stitch is going to go. Then yarn over and pull through 2 to finish it. So we have a window, 1, 2, 3 windows. At the bottom there's a chain, and at the top there's a chain, and in here is a double crochet. If you were doing chains and back, it would look the same, except for ours is a triple crochet that gets bent. Triple, treble, they're kind of the same. I think officially I would call it a treble crochet, but sometimes my words come out weird and I call it a triple. So you can call it whatever you want. And we're going to make 17 windows, and you just keep going. One of the fun things about using this technique is if you miscount, you get to the end, you've done this next step, and you find that you have the wrong count, you just keep going. You just add them to the end. So it's handy, even if you prefer to use the chaining technique, you can always add a window at the end using the treble. So we are going to add 17 windows. Okay, so I have my 17 windows in my main color. You can now put a stitch marker here to keep that from unraveling. And we're going to get our accent color foundation because interlocking crochet is 2 layers of mesh. They are technically individually worked. This blue will never be stitched into the dark one. It'll only go through the windows. So these 2 layers of mesh will be worked simultaneously, get locked together, woven together, however you like to say it. We could do the same type of foundation using the chainless when it comes to our accent, but it's much more difficult to be weaving it through the windows. So this is now the same technique that you could use for this, only you'll make a different amount of windows. 1 window less in the accent color than the main color. With our accent color, we're going to chain 35 If you were doing the main color and you wanted to do this chain technique, you chain 37. Okay, so for our accent color, we've done 35, and now we are going to place our main color windows on top of this chain. This is really what it's going to do, only this tail has to come through the window and it lays across like so. So this is round 0, 1, and 2. We're now doing 3 if you were reading off the chart and you were matching it. We are going to now, working through the windows, do our double crochets that will now make this foundation trellis in the blue. So the first one we're going to do is yarn over and go through this window, because our stitch is going to be brought to the back of this trellis. We have to use the 5th chain, and it can be difficult to figure out which one is the 5th when it's all locked in here, right? So 1, 2, I'm counting the back bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the back bump that I want to use. I'm just going to stretch it out so that I know which one to grab. So yarn over. Oh, now I've twisted it. Oh gosh, hey. Okay, so my back bump, it's still, you could use a stitch marker, but I don't like them. They're too fiddly. Because this is so easy, right? This is what is daunting. People don't want to try the technique because this right here is so fiddly and annoying, but it gets better, I promise. So I've yarned over. I'm going to go through this window and grab the chain that I had loosened, that 5th one, and then I make sure that everything is now behind the main color wall. Yarn over, do my double crochet, chain 1, yarn over. We're going to go through the next window. So we've got the chain that we used. We're going to skip one chain and we're going to grab the next one. We're going to pull everything to the back to do the double crochet. Yarn over, 2, 2, chain, yarn over. We're going to go through the windows. It's going to be all the way across. We're skipping one chain and we're using the next one. This yarn absolutely sucks. I apologize. I'm trying to use up my stash, and this is Karen kindness. It was like $2 and now I know why. So we're going to do this all the way across so that you are going to have 2 trellises with these windows that happen to be locked to each other. Please make sure you're careful that you know this is the bottom and not this one. Put a stitch marker if you need to, right? Do something, tie a bow, I don't know. But it's easy to get them flipped and twisted. So we want to make sure that the bottom stays the bottom, that this is going along. This is now the right side. This is the front with all these straight lines. The wrong side will have all these pokies. So dark blue, light blue, dark blue, and then this light blue is showing up at the top. This is how all of my patterns start. We will get into more interesting stuff in just a second. I'm going to go all the way across now. Okay, I finished my accent color foundation. We went all the way through every single window. So we've now got these 2 flappy trellises that are just sort of locked together. The blue stitches are all in the blue and the dark green is all in the dark green. You can switch your stitch marker. I am going to trust that I'm not going to yank my stitch out. I don't really like using the stitch markers. I crochet too fast to be bothering with that. We are going to turn our work, and if you have the pattern in front of you, which you don't need, you can just follow this video. Although I do appreciate the sales of the pattern, you can definitely do that too. Now we are looking at the wrong side. So you can see that the lines are doing like this. This is the wrong side. We're going to be using our main color first, which is the dark one. I'm just going to get my hook in there. Okay. And this is our accent color, tails and working yarn. It's going to be accent color to back. That means away from us. We're going to keep it on this side so that next time when we go to use it, it's on the right side. It has to be dealt with now before we make our first stitch. And we are in a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. This is the first stitch on this row. Each main color row is going to have 18 stitches, counting this as 1, then the next one will be 2, etc. Our first locked together stitch is 1B, aka 1 in the back. So we're going behind the blue to find our dark green, and we're going right at the top of the double crochet stitch. There's that little V that we're used to. We go right into it just like normal. We just happen to be working around all this random blue stuff. Always after a stitch, if you read the key, we need to chain 1. Then we'll have 14 in the front. So what we're going to do, yarn over, and now we're working in front of this blue. We're still going into the same spot, but we need to make sure that everything is brought to the front before we yarn over. We don't want this green to be around that one. The blue, it has to be separate. So we do our double crochet, chain 1. Whoops. Yarn over, double crochet, find that spot, make sure everything is at the front, all the way across. Well, not all the way across, almost all the way across. We have, if you look at the picture, the edges are all locked with 3 straight lines on all 4 edges. That is just a me thing. Other designers who do interlocking crochet and call it whatever they may call it, they can lock their edges differently. So your foundation rows and how you deal with your side stitches are going to be slightly different possibly. And if you want to do my patterns but you change how you lock together the borders, I really don't care. I'm not offended. You can still share your progress in my Facebook group. I'm not going to be like, you edited it, go away. It doesn't bother me. If you want them to look like mine, you just have to pay attention to keeping these tails always on the right side of your work, the pretty side. That's about it. So when we get to the end, we'll have an end stitch, which is this final side, and then this is the locking one. It'll be in the back. So all these other ones are in the front. And if we were counting, we would have 14 front stitches. So we can count. This one was back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And this is now 14. So that leaves us with 1 back stitch. So that means we're going behind the blue. We're going to grab the top of that double crochet, go under the V, just like a normal stitch. Chain 1. Our end stitch, you can go either skip a chain and work into this chain. I am very lazy and I just go right into the whole window. Is good enough for me. You may be more particular. I know a lot of my customers are. That's fine. So this is the wrong side. When we're counting our rows, we put our work down, we come back, we go, oh no, I don't know what row I was on. Starting with the bottom, this is row 0. So when we count the windows, this is 0. The row 1 would be the bottom of blue, which means that the box, the window, you can count by 2. You can say 2, 4. That means I just finished 4. I know this one is now going to be 5. I'll count the rows again later to give you some more practice at that. Moving on to row 5, we're using our accent color. The first thing it tells us is chain 3 in back. Now if you did not move your tails to the right side, you'd be working in front, and you can't change it now unless you're going to undo your whole row. So it's up to you how you want to deal with those kinds of mistakes. You can also cut your yarn and reattach it. And I have been known to work through the windows horribly, like dragging this tail along. Not fun. At this point I would take it apart because it's such a short piece. But if you have a blanket of 300 stitches, I'm probably not going to be pulling 300 stitches apart for that. So chain 3 in back. It's just a double check to make sure you're in the right spot. The next stitch is this one here, and we're going to count 7. So this is 1, there are 7 in the back, which means we are working behind the main color, and we grab our stitch and make sure everything is behind. 2. You can just pull this whole flap down because it's available. Some patterns, when they're very locked and intricate, you can't, there's nothing to pull out of the way, so you have to be more careful. But in this case, we can just pull this whole wall down, and then all of our stitches are going to be behind it. Now I wasn't counting, let me count again. This was our chain 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's important to know how to count your stitches because for any number of reasons you can walk away from your project and you need to know where you were. The next stitch is in the front. So we have to make sure our windows and our stitches are all lining up. The next stitch is going to use this blue, but we need to work it in front of the main colored teal. So first, always yarn over. Make sure you know what you're doing. Yarn over. We're going to go in front of the teal, the main color, and we're going to go into the stitch and bring it all to the front. We're not going to yarn over until everything is at the front because this stitch needs to stay on this side. Chain 1. And then we're going back to the back stitches. 7 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one looks weird. So probably what happened, maybe, was I recording? I'm not sure. I don't think I was. Sometimes when I do my double crochet stitches, I get carried away and I accidentally do this and it gives it an extra bump. And then when I go to do my chain, I don't know what I do. I pull it through both or something. I get this weird stitch anyway. It's not quite right. I am not taking it apart. What I'm just going to do is pretend it's sufficient because it looks good enough, but it does feel weird to work into it. So when you come to something like that and you're like, oh, it's a bit wrong, I don't worry about it. It's close enough. And maybe that's a life lesson for you. Not everything has to be perfect. If you're entering this into the state fair and they're going to examine it with a microscope, maybe you want to fix it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we have EB, which means end in the back. Our end stitch. It's for this weird box that has nothing making it a box, right? It leans weird because nothing is pulling on it yet. So we're going to yarn over and go behind the last window here. And this, again, you could find your second chain and work into it. I just take the whole box. I go into the whole box, bring it all to the back, yarn over, finish your double crochet. So, straightening things out, you can see that the end stitches for the main color are always on the outside. The accent color is one window smaller, and its end stitches are always going to be inside. The bottom as well. It's all main color at the bottom. This is the wrong side because they're all like this. We're going to flip our work now. This is the right side because we have these 3 nice straight lines that have locked it together. And along the edges, we are almost creating 3 straight lines. 1, 2, 3 that'll lock everything together. The design happens in the middle. If you're looking at the pattern, it tells you RS for right side, ACF, accent color forward. We do got a little bit of a tangle with our tails. So the first thing I need to do is find the right loop. Accent color tails need to be brought forward. They need to be towards us. And we're going to keep them down here out of the way. We don't want to crochet into them in any way. We just want them here available for when we start that row. So we start with 1, 2, 3. That's our chain on the side. Counts as a double crochet and a chain space. The first stitch is 1 in the front. This is our locking border. This outside edge will be visible the whole way up. If you keep these tails always to the right side of your work, moving them accent forward or accent back, then you'll make a nice straight line. And this one too, it's always going to make a nice straight line because it's locked in. Now that we are not doing the border lines, not that it's on the written pattern, you can't tell what's a border and what's not, but I'm just explaining, over-explaining for fun. The next stitches say 6 in the back. So we're going to move this whole flap down again, making sure, see this stitch is already used, so we're not going to use it again. The next stitch is here, yarn over, we're going to double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain, that's 2, double crochet, chain, that's 3, here's 4, 5, and 6. So you can see that all of our main color is creating this mesh. Double crochets go into the double crochets, chain space between it all, making these boxy mesh 2 layers that happen to be locked together. Make sure you chain after every double crochet. Then it has 2 in the front. Make sure the window space and the stitch are locked up, like lined up. Bring it all to the front. 1 and 2. Now this design happens to be a mirror image. So you'll notice if there's 6 in the back here, there'll be 6 in the back here. Maybe you can memorize the pattern faster that way, move a little quicker. I'm just going to read the pattern as it's written because it makes sense to me. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That means our next stitch is this one here in the front. So we go into it the same as we always do, but we still make sure everything is in front of that accent color layer. And our end stitch just goes into this window on the side. You could do something with your tail if you want, but I'm just going to leave it. Moving right along, we are on round 7. Round. These are not in the round, therefore it's a row. Row 7. It starts with chain 3 in front. And again, this is just a reminder to double check that your tails were left at the right side. If you are in the back, your locking lines will be slightly different. It's not really the end of the world. We have 5 front stitches now. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5. If you're reading the pattern, we now have brackets. Now this is the first time we've seen brackets in this pattern. They are not too difficult. All it means is that you start at the beginning of the bracket. It says 1 back, 1 front. So you read it through. You do 1 back, 1 front. Here we go. Our stitch, you have to make sure that the windows are lined up and the stitches, because you need to know which window you're going through. If you go through this window, things are going to get crooked and it'll be wrong. If you go through this window to grab it, it'll be wrong. So you need to make sure that everything is lined up. You go through the proper window and then grab the proper stitch. And everything gets brought to the back before we do any of our yarn overs. You can also count your windows. We did 5 in the front, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the back. Chain 1, we did 1 in the back, and now 1 in the front. Now our brackets say times 2. So now we're going to go to the beginning of the bracket again, and it says 1 in the back and 1 in the front. And now we've completed the instructions in the back, in the brackets. So everything is lined up. We create a box here and we'll have 2 lines here, and everything else is kind of simple right now. So our next stitch is 1 in the back. Again, make sure you're going through the correct window. Everything is lined up. 5 in the front. Now these front stitches feel easy because this layer is on the front. Just make sure when you're going into this stitch that you don't also grab anything back here. Sometimes hooks are very hooky. They grab stuff, you know? That's, I don't know if that's why I started poking my finger with every stitch, but that's what I do. Every stitch, I poke my finger. Maybe I do that in regular crochet too. I'm not sure. I can crochet with my eyes shut. I don't have to look, but I prefer to look. Then I know what I'm doing. Our end EF, end front. This wall, this is counting as a double crochet here. That's where our final stitch needs to go. You can go into this second chain, or you just go in the whole window front. And then we will flip our work again. Do not pull on this and make your loop small unless you are sure that you've got something to hold it, because I have been known to pull too hard and I've undone the stitches before it. So we're going to start with the 3. 1, 2, 3. These tails need to be kept at the back. So when we do our first back stitch, these tails are here waiting for the next time they get used, right? So we got to grab that double crochet and chain. Then we'll have 5 in the front. Make sure they are not grabbing any of the light blue. Next stitch is 1 in the back, 2 in the front. Now it is easy because you can't really see that this stitch is being used. Some people accidentally grab the wrong stitch, so make sure that you are paying attention to which stitches have been used already. 2 in the front, then we will have 1 in the back, and 5 in the front. Then we have 1 in the back. Make sure that we are going through the window, grab the stitch, pull it all back. And our final one says ES, end stitch. It's just going in the window. It's neither front nor back because it's on the side. There's nothing to be in front or behind. Only main color rows say ES. Accent color rows will tell you if it's EB or EF. For row 9, you can see that it likes to fold on itself and you might forget where you are. So make sure that everything is straight, flattened down. You'll see that the main color is on the outside. So this is now behind. It says chain 3 and back. 1, 2, 3. We are behind. Then we have brackets again. They say 3 back, 1 front times 3. So we'll go in here, we'll go 1 and 2 and 3. That's 3 in the back, 1 in the front. So make sure your windows are lined up. This stitch goes here, that stitch goes here, this stitch goes. So this is the window. We're going to go through here to get our yarn, bring it all to the front. And now we have to repeat our bracket information. It says 3 back, 1 front. Okay. So we go here, 1, 2, and 3. So 3 in the back and 1 in the front. That's our second time that we've done the brackets. We'll do it a third time now. 3 in the back, and 1 in the front. So make sure it's going in the right window and that you're grabbing the proper stitch. But bring everything to the front before you yarn over and finish your double crochet. Now outside of the brackets, we still have 3 in the back again, just to finish everything mirror image, you know. 1, 2, 3. And our final stitch, EB, end in the back. So we have to go behind this screen, grab the whole window. Oops, I forgot to yarn over. There we go. Yarn over, grab the window, double crochet. So this is what it looks like. We're going to turn our work. We're going to do now round 10. The right side is facing us. These accent color tails need to be kept to the front. Grab my main color, chain 3. 1, 2, 3. The first stitch is in the front, is making those straight border lines. So you can see the border lines a little bit more. 1, 2, 3, and over here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's it. Now we've got brackets again, 2 back, 2 front, times 3. So 1 and 2, then 2 front, 1 and 2, then we go back to 2 back, 1 and 2. It actually goes all the way across, because even outside of the brackets it's just alternating 2 front, 2 back, 2 front, 2 back, all the way across. 2 front, and 2 back. Two front. That's the end of the brackets, but it doesn't really matter. We're going to make another 2 in the back just to even it all up. Then we'll have 1 in the front. It's our border line that's locking everything in here. And our end stitch right on the side. Chain 3 in front. We are working in front of the tealish color. Then we have 3 front stitches. This is 1 and 2 and 3. 1 in the back, so that little box is showing up. We haven't blocked anything. Then we have 2 in the front. 1 and 2. So you'll notice here on the front, when we have a box, on the wrong side we get a plus sign. So the stitches are opposite, not necessarily inversed image, but inversed stitches. Then we have 3 in the back, so it's going to be right beside the box. 1, then right behind the box, 2, and right beside the box, 3. Then we've got 2 in the front. Make sure that you know this one's already been used, so it's over here. 1, 2. 1 in the back, we're making that box. 3 in the front. And our final stitch, end in the front. Make sure everything is lining up. We're using this final window space to go in that final window, or you can find the second chain if you prefer. We're going to flip our work. We're going to be working from the wrong side for row 12. These accent color tails need to stay at the back and not get locked into anything the wrong way. 1, 2, 3. First stitch goes in this window, grabs it, pulls it to the back. Make sure you're not going through these. 1 in the back. Then we'll have 4 in the front. Back front, 1 stitch and 1 stitch. Then we have 2 in the back corresponding to these 2 windows. 1, 2. 1 in the front. 1 in the back. 4 in the front. 1 in the back goes in this window, and the end stitch just goes on the side, not in front or behind anything. We smooth everything out. We find that we are doing chain 3 behind the main color. Our next stitch is here. We're going to do 4 in the back. 1. We can pull this down a little bit. We can see what we're doing. 2, 3. Oopsies. 4. Our brackets tell us we're doing 1 in the front, then 2 in the back, twice. So 1 in the front goes here. 2 in the back. 1, 2. We'll repeat that bracket information. 1 in the front. 2 in the back. Outside of the brackets, we have 1 in the front again, and 4 in the back. End stitch, make sure that you could put it in that window right here right now, but then things are going to be tangled. So make sure you line everything back up. The end stitch has to go through the final window to grab that. That keeps this line locked in the right spot. Now we're going to be using our main color. We are looking at the right side. Keep these accent color tails to the front. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. 1 in the front. Then 1 in the back. The next stitch goes in the front. So again, we need to make sure that the windows are lining up with the stitches. So this one goes here, one in the front, then we'll have 3 in the back. One in the front, 2 in the back. Each stitch is either showing or hiding the top of the previous row, right? So here, if we wanted to show the blue, we put it behind so that we can see the blue. 1 in the front and 3 in the back. 1, whoopsies. 1. 2, 3. Then we have a front, back, front. Make sure your windows are all lined up. Front and back. And front. End stitch right on the side. Accent color, chain 3 in front, so we can see that everything is in front. The instructions make sense. We are in the right place. We will keep going. 1, 2, 3. Then we've got 2 in the front, 1 and 2, 1 in the back. The bracket says to do that again, so we'll put 2 in the front, 1 in the back. Then we're at a new set of brackets that says 1 front, 1 back. So we'll do that twice. 1 front, 1 back. Repeat that. 1 front, 1 back. Outside of the brackets, we have 2 front, 1 back. And another 2 in the front. Our end stitch is also in the front to keep that line nice and straight on both sides. Grabbing our main color, keeping those accent color tails to the back, away from us. Chain 3, 1 in the back. So making sure that those tails aren't tangled. A stitch in the back. And 3 in the front. 1 helps to smooth it out a bit, right? 2, 3, 1 in the back, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, 2 in the front. One in the back. Again, make sure you're getting the right window. I know that's one of the trickiest things to do. Whoops. then 3 in the front. One in the back, and the end stitch right on the side. So if we flatten it out, we can see that we are now behind that main color layer. Chain 3 in back. Our first stitch is also in the back. 1. The next one is in the front. The next one is in the back. Then we have 2 in the front. One in the back. 3 in the front. One in the back. 2 in the front. Back, front, back. One of everything. End stitch in the back. Make sure you are grabbing it so that that dark color line is straight. Right side is facing us. Our accent color tails are along the front. Chain 3, and then 16 in the front. So all of these stitches are going to be front stitches. If you are counting, every main color row has 18 stitches. I count this edge stitch as 1, and every stitch inside, which we have 16 across, and then the edge stitch on the other side. So there's 18 in this pattern for the main color, which means there's 1 less for the accent color. And I usually put a stitch marker every 20 rows along the side just to help me count. I will show you in 5 minutes. How long is it going to take us to get to row 20? This is row 18. Every stitch is in the front. If you were counting, which I guarantee I was not, this is stitch 16. Then we don't want to forget our end stitch right on the side. Row 19, we are working on the front already, so we see that it says chain 3 in front, front, back, front. Oops, my yarn split there. Not the greatest yarn, but it's okay. It still looks pretty. 2 in the back. Now you may notice this is the exact same design as the top and the bottom. So it's mirrored this way and this way. If you were really good at memorizing things, you wouldn't even need the pattern. I'm not really good at memorizing things, so I need the pattern. Make sure you're lining up your windows. Next one here is in front. Then we get 3 in the back. See all these windows? We're going to be behind all 3 of those spots. 1, 2, 3. 1 in the front. 2 in the back. Front, back, front. End stitch is also in the front. I don't even have to read the pattern to know it because I can see my line here, so I know we would like to continue that line all the way up. So this is round 20. It's just where I like to put a stitch marker to help me keep track of the rows. So first, I just do the first stitch. I get a window to make my marks. The first stitch is in the back. And the next one is in the front. So it's actually 3 in the front, but I'm just going to pause. So we can see here the main color is on all the edges, and that is my wrong side because the edges are all lines like this. This is the right side with the straight lines. So we count from the windows. The bottom window counts as 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. I'm going to put this in the window for 20. So I know that right at the top is me creating round 20. If I put this down for any length of time and I had 30 or 50 rows or whatever it is, I could just count these. I would go, okay, 0, 20, 40, 60. It's faster. That's why I do it. You don't have to. If you, especially for a project like this, it's quite small. So maybe you don't need to know what row you're on. You could put them every 10 rows. I do suggest that you keep them all on the same side so that you can easily find them and count as opposed to flipping back and forth. Now, back to our thing. We did 1 in the back. Now we have 3 in the front. 1, 2, 3. Then we have 1 in the back. 2 in the front. 2 in the back. 2 in the front. 1 in the back. 3 in the front. One in the back. Make sure you're going in that final window. And the end stitch on the side. Now this was window 20, which means at the top it has to be 21. So I know that I'm counting the main color, dark ones, so the top is 20, which means the next one is 21. 1, 2, 3, we are in the back. That is good to know. Bracket says do 2 in the back, then 1 in the front, 2 times. Oops. 1 in the front, 2 in the back, one in the front. The next set of brackets says back, front, back, front. outside of the brackets, we have 2 in the back, 1 in the front, then 2 in the back, 1 in the front. It's the mirror image. Two in the back. There we go. That end in the back seems to be one of the harder stitches for people, so make sure that you are keeping all these tails in the right spot, keeping the window in the right spot, so that everything is lined up and it's just the stitches going over here. Round 22, 1, 2, 3, 1 in the front, 1 in the back, 1 in the front, then 3 in the back, 1 in the front, 2 in the back. One in the front, 3 in the back, 3 in the back. There we go. Then we have front, back, front. And stitch right into the window. So we have just completed 22. Round 23 begins with chain 3 in the front. We are in the right spot. Then we have 4 stitches in the front. Brackets tell us to repeat this twice. We're going to do 1 back, 2 front. So again, 1 back, 2 front. Leaves us with 1 back and 4 front. End stitch goes on the front. Row 24, 1, 2, 3, 1 in the back. I get so used to knowing where these tails go that I forgot to say it out loud, but it does stay in the back. 4 in the front, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 back, 1 front. Then we'll have 2 in the back. I kind of like the design that's here on the back too. It's pretty, right? Then we have 1 in the front again, 1 in the back, 4 in the front. One in the back, that's our locking line, and stitch on the side. $25, using our accent color. If we smooth this out, we can see that we are in the back. Chain 3. Then we have 3 in the back. 1, 2, 3. Make sure you line up your windows. 1 in the front. You want the right stitch and the right window. They both matter. 2 in the back. 3 in the front. 2 in the back. 1 in the front. 3 in the back. End stitch is also in the back. Accent color tails, keep them at the front. I put them at the front all the way down below it so that the balls aren't being tangled. 1, 2, 3. 1 stitch in the front. Two back, 2 front, all the way across. Repeated over and over, okay? You can read the brackets and everything like that, but what you're really doing is going 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. You remember that from row somewhere else down here, right? Very quiet in my house when the kids aren't home, which is great for making videos, but it feels weird. Okay, so we did 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 all the way across. Now all we have left is these locking borders. So we've got 1 in the front and the end stitch on the side. This yarn is very twisty. It keeps tangling itself up. I think it's just because of how many times I had to cake it. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Chain 3 in front. 1, 2, 3. Then the brackets tell us to do 3 in the front, 1 in the back. It says times 3, but it also ends with another 3 in the front. So you can just go 3 in the front, 1 in the back, 3 in the front, 1 in the back, over and over until you get to the end. 3 in the front, 1 in the back. 3 in the front, 1 in the back. 3 in the front, one in the back, and the final 3 in the front, 1 and 2 and 3. The final stitch here is an end in the front. It's still a double crochet, it's just technically a little different, going into the window instead of the stitch. Looking at the wrong side, using our main color, the accent color tails are at the back. We start with chain 3. 1, 2, 3. The first stitch goes in that first window. It's 1 stitch in the back. Then we have 5 in the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 in the back. Make sure you're getting the right window and the right stitch. Then 2 in the front. 1 in the back. 5 in the front. One stitch in the back. It's our locking border one. It goes in the last window. And our end stitch goes on the side. 29. We are behind. You can see that it likes to curl up on itself, but if you flatten everything out, we are working behind. Chain 3 and back. 1, 2, 3. Next stitch uses this window and this stitch. We're going to have 5 in the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then our brackets say do front, back twice. So we're going to count it. 1 and 1. Then we do it again. This is the second time. And the second time. Outside of the brackets, it tells us we have only 1 front stitch and 5 back stitches. The final stitch is end in the back. Make sure it's on the right side of that green line. On row 30, using our main color, the accent tails are in the front because we're looking at the right side. Chain 3. 1 in the front. 6 in the back. Five and 6. Then we have 2 in the front. And 6 in the back again. Our locking border goes in the front again. We use this window. And the end stitch right on the side. Row 31, back to our accent color. We are, of course, in the front because we're looking at the right side and we want that line on the front. So we got chain 3. Then we have 7 in the front, and the only one that'll be in the back is right behind this square. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 in the back, then back to all the front, 7 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. End stitch in front. Now, if you have the written pattern, this square is nearly finished. Up here, we could continue with the table runner and it creates some leaves. We in the video are just going to finish it off to be a square. So I have written in the pattern an alternate row 32 where we're at. If you're doing a table runner, make sure you skip this alternate section and go to the proper row 32. So you have to know what you're making. Today we're making a little square. So this says alternate row 32. We're looking at the wrong side. The first thing we're going to do is move this accent color tails to the front. Now this is bizarre, right? Because we've been keeping that tail on the right side, but now we want this locked in the way I have it here. You can, if you hate it, it's fine. I lock it in with the bar at the top and the bar at the bottom. I guess this is the bottom and this is the top. I don't know. It's all the same. It doesn't matter which way you face it. But we're going to put the tails at the back this time. If you're doing a table runner, you're going to keep them at the front because you're going to make more picture. But because we're finishing it off, this is how you finish it off. So we got a chain 3. We're still going to put our first stitch through this window in the back. So we just got to make sure that the tails are out of the way. And we go behind this blue, grab our stitch, make sure everything is at the back. There we go. Then we're going to have all of these in the front until we get to the locked border on the other side, of course. If you want to count them, it's 14. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So our locking border stitch goes in the back again, and our end stitch on the side. Now this will be the final row using our light colored yarn. We will cut it after this. So the first thing we do, besides get the loop on the hook, there we go. It says chain 3 in front. So that's why we had to keep the tails here, because now our chain 3 is going on this side. And then all of these stitches are also in the front, which creates this locking dashes, okay? So if you're counting them, it's 15, but really it's just every single stitch. So every stitch and every window. So because we're keeping it all to the front, the side we're looking at, and this makes the edges locked together so that you don't have two loose layers of mesh flapping about. Sometimes when you do this too quickly, it's easy to miss the stitch and use the chain space instead. So double check that you're actually getting the stitch. And it's going to be all the way across all the stitches. This is 15. And then our end stitch is end in the front again. So that goes in this window in the front. This is the only stitch where I actually go 1, 2 chains and I lock it into the chain space, simply because there won't be another row to pull it into place. So that keeps the corner of the box looking more boxy. That's all. It's optional. You can go in the window again if you like. I pull it through here because I'm going to cut my yarn. Your tail, if you're going to be weaving this in, you need your tail long enough that you can do stuff with it, but not so long that you're wasting yarn. This is a bit long. Usually I make them shorter, but I really don't care about this yarn. It's disgusting. This will be our final row using the main color. We're back to looking at the front, the right side, and we are on alternate round or row 34, because this is finishing off the little blossom square. It's an optional little extra in the runner pattern. All of these stitches are now going to be in the back, so it's locking it in again. It's going to create a nice straight line. So like at the bottom here, we have the straight line. It's going to create the straight line at the top. So for the first stitch here, we need to go through the window because it has to be behind the blue. So make sure everything is lining up. This is the first blue window. Yarn over. We're going behind this one. Grab our stitch, pull it all to the back. Then the next window. Grab your stitch, pull it back. So every window, every stitch, all the way across. You may also notice at this point that your square may not be 100% square. Perhaps your tension has created a rectangle. That's okay. If you're going to join a bunch of rectangles together, as long as they're the same size, it really doesn't matter. If you'd like to make it more square, when you're doing your double crochet, there's this tension on this loop. I keep mine pretty tight, which creates a shorter stitch. Some people pull this up quite a bit and they get a very tall stitch. So this is called a golden loop. You can look it up, Google it. I don't have a blog article on it, but some other people do. And that affects how tall your stitches are. It's a tension issue, and you can adjust that so that you get a more square piece. If it doesn't bother you, don't worry about it. Just crochet. Crochet is supposed to be fun, relaxing. Use your brain a little bit for the counting. That's what I like anyway. And once we are done here, there is one final optional step, the border. So you can be done at a square or you can add the border. Adding the border, it makes it easier to find which stitches you're going to be joining later. And it helps these ends lay flatter. That's about it. So it's up to you whether you want to do it or not. You could cut your yarn right now. We are done. So that's the square. You can cut your yarn if you want. You're going to be all done. I'm going to add a border now. I'm going to keep the right side facing me. And in every window, I'm going to be adding 2 crochets, 2 single crochets. But I'm also going to be locking this layer so that it's very tight, which means that my first stitch, I just do a little bit of a slip there, chain and tighten it so that it's not, so it's tightened. So my first stitch, instead of just doing 2 single crochets in the window, you can, that is an option. I prefer to use my border to also pull these accent color layer closer to the main color layer. It is locked, there's no open mesh. The first stitch when you go into this window, I'm also going to grab 1 loop of the blue, and then I'll do a single crochet like normal. Then I only am going around the main color for the second stitch. This loop gets quite big, so when I'm at the end, I'm going to grab a different loop and that'll tighten it back up again. So first stitch, I go through the window and I'm going to pick up 1 loop of this light blue stuff. Try to make it the same loop every time. That'll keep your spacing. So what I like to do is actually use this, because this is the side. I use this front loop. It's kind of just hanging here because your yarn is very stretchy and it stretches up and then it has this gap. So because I'm pulling it from here, it keeps the gap smaller. The second stitch for the window, I'm just going around the main color. So first stitch, I'm going to pick up, this was chain 3 and this was the double crochet. So on the sides, it's different than on the bottom and the top. So on the side, the first stitch, just going to pick up a random loop, but it's the same random loop every time. So here we're back to that stitch at the front, and then the loop. I know it's kind of weird. If you prefer a different spot to join things, go ahead. But if you're looking for what I do, this is it. Now, these were my counting rows stitch marker here. I don't need that. So it's locking it together and then the second single crochet, locking them together, then the second crochet, locking it together, oops, second single crochet, all the way down. Okay, so you can already see how it's flattening it out. It makes the dark color on the outside easier to see than where it's kind of curls in on itself. The final window, what I've been doing is locking it and then adding the second stitch. For the very corners, all of them, I prefer to lock it in closest to the corner. So this time I'm going to put the first stitch into the window with nothing else, and the second stitch I'm going to grab a loop from this blue one and finish the single crochet around both of them. Then I'm going to turn it. I'm going to chain 1. You can chain 2 if you really want to. 1 is sufficient. And now I'm going to lock it in again. So I'm going to go in, pick up a different loop so that it's not just pulling all on the same loop. So we're going to lock it in, put it in the window. So this is top and bottom where it has those chain stitches. I prefer to use the front loop of the double crochet. That's what I lock it with. Locking and then in the window. Front loop of it, locking it, and then in the window all the way across. Front loop, lock it in. You will need to weave this tail in, but you can already see how without blocking it has helped things to lay more flat, and it keeps it from having any tabs that you can pull on. So it's up to you, optional. Okay, so I've done all of my sides. Now I put the stitch in the window, the stitch locking into another string with the blue, one chain because that's what I've been putting in all the corners, and then I join it to that first single crochet that I made. Cut it, weave it in, bada boom, bada bing. Whose little catchphrase is that? It's like a cook or something, right? I don't know. I don't watch enough TV. So you can see my square is not quite square. Blocking could help. You could stretch it out a bit. It's supposed to be a square. But we'll just weave in these little tassels on the corners and we'll be good to go. And there's your square. It is a nice size. Join a bunch of them together, make something else. If you were to continue, I'll show you the runner. So that's kind of how it works. Either, you know, just do the blossom at the end. Well, clearly I was working the other way. See, I try to be square with my stitches, but they're not actually. So you either do the blossom or you keep going and you do the runner. That is the small Tranquil Leaves Runner. The large one has a slightly different blossom and then a slightly different kind of leaf. It's also more stitches, so it's bigger, large. And you can do them interlocking like I just showed you, or mosaic. Both options come with mosaic. So then the little mesh dots are not included. So these little dots show on the chart. When I do for mosaic, I remove the dots. It's nice and solid. And of course you can have a small one, a large one, or a blankie. Now I might have shown this in a different one. This is the center out one because you can see the colors go from the center out, they change. You can get the same image working from the bottom up. It's definitely too big for my camera here. I can't go back any farther. But you can get the same image working from the bottom up or from the center out, interlocking or mosaic. So 4 options for the blanket. 2 runners, small and large, each have blossom ability or adjustable. If you wanted to skip how many leaves, add them, etc. There we go.